All right, good morning, good morning. All right, let's finish off the preliminaries. So it's already been 2 years till mob violence, a few years after that to have courts be, since they were test cases, since they couldn't do all the cases of everyone having their houses roofs ripped off and other things like that, how it's presented is that the courts were being extremely unfavorable to the Saints. When there was $50,000 in damages, they only gave them $750. When someone gets beaten, tarred, and feathered, they get 1 penny. And it makes me wonder, like, how that was working. Are the courts basically saying, well, sure, it's against your rights and everything, so we'll make the ruling in your favor, but deal with it? Or was it along the lines of, did they give him a penny because that's all he asked for, so that way they have a ruling on the books? It's hard to say, right? We don't have the context of it because it was not given in the book. It is made to sound like it was extremely unjust. At the same time, they could have made a deal behind it. It's like when famous people sue each other because someone said something very stupid and extremely wrong, and they could be fleeced for millions and billions of dollars or whatever else, but instead they're like, yeah, just $1. It's like they ruled in the person's favor because, yeah, obviously what happened to them was wrong, but they made a statement that they're not here to actually, they don't need the funds, so we don't know if it's something like that or if it really is the courts just being jerks. So, who knows? Keep that in mind. I was thinking about that last time I left. I also was thinking about how, I still am trying to get into the mindset of the people from Missouri, right? Because let's say you do have that annoying neighbor, the one who is self-righteous and judgmental and annoying and snippy and everything like that. Like, imagine them being like the worst Karen, but they're hardworking. They're decent. They're a decent person. They do well in the neighborhood. You just have to put up with their comments. It's like, they're a headache. I get it. That's fine. Especially them talking about how they'll take over the neighborhood. I mean, I guess if you imagine 2,000 Karens moving in and things like that. But at what point do people flip over to doing atrocities of ripping down people's houses, beating them in the streets, destroying their livelihood, tarring and feathering them, and then literally turning away people from moving where they want to move, where you're like defending your neighborhood? Like, the reason I want to get into the mindset of these people, the reason I want to understand them on both sides, is I want to know where both sides go wrong so that it doesn't happen again. Because here's a good observation. We're regular people. Everyone are regular people. What makes the difference between people who are good and righteous people, who can be Zion-like, and those who can't? What is that? That's what I'm trying to figure out with these stories and histories. Because I can sit here and I can say, okay, so this is just a relationship spiral where, it is a lack of trust between the two, so anything either side does is just viewed as them being jerks or the worst people ever, and oh my gosh, they deserved it, which we have plenty of today. And we're quick to pass judgment on saying, oh yeah, this person totally deserved what they got, etc. And it's just, we are no different than those people in Missouri. I don't care if you're part of the church or not. We are no different than them. We can become just as evil and just as bad. Look at the end of the Book of Mormon. The Nephites became worse than the Lamanites, and they were the ones who were supposed to be the believers of Jesus Christ. So that's why I focus on this. So I'm trying to figure out what causes this mentality and how can I avoid it. How can everyone avoid it? And how and that way I can help teach it to my children, to myself, to others, so that way we can avoid falling in that trap. Like I was also considering, if you are the one in power and you are showing restraint and kindness, you're in a much better position. Can it? This is the question I do not have an answer for, and I'm trying to think through. Can you be in a lower strength, a lower power, and show humility, kindness, and forgiveness to someone without them trampling all over you? Because think about it. The mobs were there and exercising their power over the saints through destruction, malevolence, guns. Why? Deep ideological disagreements to the point of, we're done here. And they continued to go from county to county, and now they were turned away from where they were settling, even though, as they said, the Mormons would take away their place in their nation. They were afraid of that. The citizens acknowledged that they were violating the peace that they had set forward and trampling on the law and the Constitution, but we cannot help it. What gets you to that mindset where you're like, yeah, I know this is against their rights and their Constitution, but we can't help it. I'm sorry. They just know. What would allow us as a society, as members of the Church of Jesus Christ, to restrain ourselves, to put our trust and belief in the principles that undergird freedom, to allow for someone who, even if we deeply disagree with them, to live peacefully with them? And at what point can we not live peacefully with someone? And what do we do then? Because that's the fundamental questions of governance of a people, of a group. Like when I was working on the prophecy key to the future, that's the question. What if everything goes to pot, just like the book says, and exactly the way that it thinks it's supposed to, and that you have this huge influx of immigration to Utah, into the tops of the mountains up here, which personally I think has already been and has happened. But let's say there's a huge influx where people are just walking here because they don't have any cars or other ways of doing it, and so they come here. And how do we know the good from the bad? How do we get rid of those people who are bad actors? And can we do that without trampling on their rights? Anyway, so this is the reverse, but happening to the Latter-day Saints. So they pulled someone out, gave him 100 lashings, that they patrolled the roads and would fight by each other's side and die in driving out the Mormons from the country. But the Mormons quickly agreed with Phelps' pledge of peace, which they had trampled on, and soon began to move. That's where I left off. In preparation, William W. Phelps and Edward Partridge had, by July 7th, filed for 20 parcels of 80 acres of land in a largely uninhabited region. We found a mill seat on Shoal Creek, about 35 miles northeast of Liberty. So, I guess this is far west or something around there. That suited us very well north of Ray County in an unorganized territory. To further clear this way, John Corll and John Murdoch met with Ray County officials to receive permission to settle in the area, which at the time was attached to Ray County. The Ray County Committee, however, demanded that all Mormons who had been turned out of Clay County and those still on the road leave their county immediately, as well as all the refugees from Jackson County who had settled earlier on the Crooked River. They also set a buffer zone of approximately 6 miles north of what was then the northern boundary line of Ray County, where the Mormons were not to settle. W. W. Phelps, John Whitmer, and Edward Partridge soon began to organize the town of Far West. Yep. So it was Far West. the new Mormon center in what would soon be Caldwell County. In late December 1836, the Missouri legislature created Caldwell County for the Mormons, and Davie County to the north, which legislation was signed into law by the newly elected Governor Lilburn W. Boggs. So we had the Davies and Caldwell County. So if you're looking at this map down here, you can see, let me see if I can get it. You can see the counties, you can see far west. You can see how it was Shoal River, or Shoal Creek. And further up was Grand River, right near where Adamon is and such. So anyway, this is interesting. So that's where they're settling. So now they have counties of their own, away from independence and liberty. They have been driven out from their homes, fully and successfully, and because they are refugees, they get kicked out from the next place that they were wanting to go to, just because local HOA said no. Local county officials said no. Mau, get down from there. Mau. Sorry, just a moment. You too, big guy. Come on. They were up on top of my bookshelf, getting into decorations, because they're curious. And they're cute. And since I'm here, they're like, let's explore. All right. In 1837, while Latter-day Saints in Missouri enjoyed relative peace and prosperity in their new locale, Kirtland was crumbling because of leadership dissension and financial and legal problems. Facing vexations and litigation and physical threats against his life, Joseph Smith, on January 12, 1838, fled Kirtland for Missouri, where he arrived at Far West 2 months later on March 14th. However, by this time, problems had emerged among the Missouri leadership. 4 days before the prophet's arrival, the Missouri High Council at Far West had excommunicated 2 members of the Missouri presidency, William W. Phelps and John Whitmer, for misconduct. 1 month later, on April 12th, the High Council excommunicated Oliver Cowdery, and a day later David Whitmer, both over matters of personal faithfulness. I was wondering when and where those guys got excommunicated from the church. So, essentially, oh God, everything is just coming to a head at this time. Okay, so the church is split between Kirtland, Ohio, and Missouri. In Missouri, it's been horrific because of the tensions there, and they're finally given an area north of where others had settled, and they're like, fine, we'll take it. They start settling in. Kirtland Banking Society, or Anti-Banking Society, collapses because that was what was happening to all the different banks at the time. But that, of course, meant that a lot of people, like Joseph Smith, was trying to do everything that he could to help the Saints be independent and work independently. And so that anti-banking society, they called it an anti-banking society because they couldn't call it a bank, because that had its own specific rules. So they just called it an anti-bank. And that way they could basically be a local community bank without having all these specific rules for banks. I can't remember what it was. I have to look it up again, but that collapsed because all the banks across the country were collapsing. And because of that collapse, a lot of members of the church and non-members of the church were very angry at Joseph Smith. They felt that he was promoting the bank, and him being a prophet, he should have known better, right? Well, he's a prophet. He should have known better than to start a bank that would fail. And probably other problems as well, but I get it. Certain ventures fail. We're supposed to do everything we can, and that was one that did not pan out. And so, again, if you have this attitude of prophets being completely infallible, then no. They are doing their best and walking forward in faith in the best way that they can, according to the light that God gives them. I think God helps us in giving us great instruction and warning and structures to help us, and miracles according to our needs that help further things in our life and in the lives of others. I think he loves all his children and provides for them as best he can, because that does not foil his plans. And so, in the end, I think that's what it's all about. I think he's just doing his best, and we as his children have to do our best too, because that's part of the plan, is learning for ourselves and gaining experience for ourselves how to accomplish things. So, yeah, I can understand people's frustrations with Joseph Smith in Ohio. And especially when the heat gets turned up and people are starting to be major detractors and such. Yeah, it's a problem. And so here Joseph Smith comes down, but as he's arriving, then William W. Phelps, I think he actually later returned. There's a lot of really good music from W. W. Phelps in our hymn book. John Whitmer, David Whitmer, Oliver Cowdery, personal faithfulness. What is the personal faithfulness part? Anyway, I was trying to look at the footnotes, but they didn't have anything on it. So that's when they start getting excommunicated from the church. So in spite of the disaffections, the church leaders remained optimistic regarding the future prospects of the church in northern Missouri and planned for additional settlements. On May 18th, Joseph Smith traveled north to Daviess County to select a site for settlement on the Grand River at Spring Hill, which they subsequently named Adam-on-Diamond. During a visit there a month later, the prophet appointed his uncle, John Smith, stake president, with Reynolds Calhoun and Lyman White as counselors. During spring and early summer, the prophet received several significant revelations that enriched the church. On April 26th, a revelation clarified the official name of the church to be the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Before that, I think it was just called, on April 6, 1830, the official name of the church was the Church of Christ. In May 1834, it was changed to the Church of the Latter-day Saints. See the Saints in the Evening and Morning Star, number 2. And so in May of 1834, the name remained the Church of the Latter-day Saints, huh? I think it was supposed to be the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Anyway, the following month, a revelation designated Adam-on-Diamond in Daviess County as the place where Adam shall come to visit his people. And on July 8th, Joseph Smith presented the church with a new financial system, the law of tithing. The church members were to pay 1/10 of all their income annually. Thereafter, this became the standard financial rule. That same July day, a revelation appointed 4 new apostles to replace those who had fallen amid the Kirtland problems, namely John Taylor, John E. Page, Wilford Woodruff, and Willard Richards. These were also men who accompanied him on Zion's march, and withstood the tests of what they had to deal with. By 1838, the Mormons living in northern Missouri were strengthened by the presence of Joseph Smith. In addition to hundreds of Latter-day Saints who had moved to the region from Ohio, the new name of the church clarified its Christian identity. The implementing of the tithing increased. It was called the Church of Christ beforehand. Okay. The implementation of tithing increased the prospect of financial security and stability, and the appointment of 4 new apostles energized the church leadership. A new spiritual optimism prevailed. The future of the new Zion looked promising and full of hope. However, dark clouds of persecution were on the horizon, and a war, the Mormon War, would result. God, that is a lot that happened in so short a time. Okay, so we're ending the time frame in 1838. So, from the first missionaries, which was 1831, 2 years until persecutions pushing them out of Jackson County, 4 years until they tried, 4 years till the point they were trying to get redress for the destruction that happened in Jackson County, and they're basically denied in the most part. And then, well, again, I don't know the characterization, whether it was that the courts were being jerks, or whether it was a settlement just to say, ha, we proved a point, you did us wrong, and we're leaving it at that, and we want to be neighborly. Like, that's the funny thing, is there's so many things that point to the idea that the saints wanted to be neighborly in some ways, in many ways, yet they were pushed to the brink by, like, how long do you take your rights being trodden on? How long does it take for you to, like, this is why I'm very curious about, can you, from a position of weakness, show kindness and respect to those who are oppressing you to heal a relationship? Can you do it from a place of weakness? What is the result of that? On a personal relationship level, I think it's absolutely possible. I think when either one person in a relationship spiral stops and starts treating the other person in humility, with respect and kindness and love, it will take a while, but things will change for the better. Because in a power dynamic between two people, especially like if they're siblings, families, loved ones that you have to be around, it doesn't matter a position of power. It matters the humility and respect you show people. Anyone who continues to stomp on another person after they are being humble and kind and such, that may happen for a while, because they're testing the boundaries. Okay, let's see, how far does this go? How willing are you to be humble and humiliated and goaded when, frankly, you always turned around and spit in my face afterwards? You know, you're just trying to act nice, so I don't think you're really, truly changing. So let's test this. Like, there's a point at which, if you keep returning kindness, for when someone gives you pain and suffering and bitterness, and you return kindness and respect and tolerance and love, there's, unless there is some sort of actual evil maniac, then I think they will change. But the thing is that you can't sit there and be two-faced about it. You can't sit there and go, oh, I understand. I will take your abuse because I know that it will help lead to a better relationship, because I know I can take the abuse. I can, if you're playing the martyr, if you're using it as a manipulative tactic, it's not going to work. It literally has to be pure-hearted and true. Because if all you do is play the martyr, then they'll see right through it. And they'll sit there and say, okay, you just change tack. Instead of fighting like cats and dogs, now you're trying to manipulate victimhood. And so you're still a jerk. Nothing's changed. This is why it's one of the hardest things to teach. How do you truly humble yourself? And you don't make mention of the pain or suffering or problems that are occurring. You stand up, strong-willed, shoulders back, back straight, and say, okay. Yeah? I understand. You don't fight back. You don't play the martyr, and you don't fight back. But you just take their abuse, their accusations, etc., and just say, no, that didn't happen in that way. But continue. If they're attacking, if things didn't really happen, It's hard to sit there and say, no, that didn't happen. Sometimes you just need to let them have it. I don't know. It depends on how bad the situation is, because if they're literally making up lies, I've seen people spiral, like whip themselves up into a fury over information. It's like, here's this little bit of information. Yes, it's inconvenient, but it's mostly taken care of. And because it's mostly taken care of, there's nothing that you have to worry about. But because you gave them that information, and even though you've told them that it's okay and it's been taken care of, I've seen someone whip themselves up into a fury. And it's just like, why? We informed you of what went wrong and took care of it, but we just needed to inform you. But yet you want to ruin your own day and your own need. I just... God, this is why people need to have the Spirit of God with them. This is why people need to actually have that spirit of peace with them, so they don't... it's amazing to me. And this is why navigating the psychology of this situation is so weird, because from a place of weakness, the saints can do what? Can they settle in these lands without them coming to kill them? No. They have to go somewhere else, even though their rights are being trampled on. Yeah. All right, so that's the end of this chapter. There is a whole bunch of notes. Most of it is just straight up I'm trying to see if there's anything that has any useful exposition or information. I don't think there is. There's just bits of history in there and about where they got information and other such things like that, but I don't see anything. And most of it is just reference. Oh, Missouri Governor Daniel Dunklin later reprimanded Colonel Thomas Pitcher for depriving the Mormons of their guns. So, yeah, when their guns got taken. Oh, yeah, after the fact, there was a reprimand, but too late, right? Yeah, there's a bunch of footnotes that might have little tidbits that are interesting. Next is going to be the 1838 Mormon-Missouri War, historical setting, and to the Hawn's Mill tragedy. So this is the things that lead up to this. And wow, this one's quite a bit bigger of a chapter. And then the actual Jacob Hawn and the Hawn's Mill settlement in eastern Caldwell County. A scene of blood and horror, the attack on Hawn's Mill settlement. So yeah, so this is getting into it. So the first part was lots of quick history, which had tons of stuff in there that I just couldn't help but comment on. And I don't know. I hope you understand that that's the point of going through history, is to look at the bad on both sides and to decide, how is it that I exemplify these bad traits? You guys are just being goofy balls. Get out from among the carrots that my wife put up. What? Let go. Hey, Goober. Let go. You're not making my life easy. Whatever. I'll get him in a moment. But that's the way I operate, is I want to see what is it that created this situation, and what happened on both sides. How do you avoid that? And what are the repercussions of it? That's just a fascinating point to me. And I know there's a lot of conjecture, but it's something that hopefully we can use our own empathy to relate with and understand. And that way we can keep the Spirit of God with us to see through what is causing things to be worse and what are the consequences and how to make things better. So, with that, may the Spirit of God be with you in your own relationships, that hopefully you can find peace. We'll see you.